You never actually needed that pressure canner for your tomatoes. Every summer, someone in your family sealed those jars using nothing but a pot of boiling water, and the tomatoes came out just fine. Turns out, that was never luck. Tomatoes carry enough natural acid to shut down the one problem a pressure canner exists to solve. There's a single number behind all of it, and once you know it, the whole canning debate stops feeling like a guessing game. The fear driving all of this isn't really about tomatoes. It's about the word botulism, and a rule so many of us absorbed without ever questioning it. A pressure canner means safe, and a water bath means risky. Public health guidance does list home-canned vegetables and tomatoes as a real category of concern, and that message can land hard on someone who watched a parent or grandparent can tomatoes for decades, using only a pot of boiling water, with nobody ever getting sick. Modern guidance actually narrows home canning down to just 2 recommended methods: a boiling water bath for high acid or properly acidified foods, and a pressure canner for everything low in acid. Older approaches like open kettle canning or canning in the oven get specifically discouraged now, not because they never worked for anyone, but because they don't reliably reach safe temperatures or seal jars the way a proper canner does. That's not a contradiction, though. It's a sign the rule got stretched further than it should have. The real danger was never pressure versus no pressure. It comes down to one specific condition forming inside a sealed jar, and whether a given food creates that condition in the first place. Most vegetables create it almost every time. Tomatoes, it turns out, almost never do. And once you understand why, the whole pressure or nothing fear starts to fall apart on its own. There's one small update worth knowing too, since a few modern tomatoes sit closer to that line than the ones your family likely grew. Understanding all of that starts with what's actually going on inside a sealed jar. Inside a sealed jar, a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum needs exactly 3 things to become dangerous. It needs an environment with no oxygen, it needs enough moisture and nutrients to grow, and it needs a pH above about 4.6. A sealed jar always hands it that first condition, since sealing out air is the whole point of canning. The only thing left for a home canner to control is the acid level, and heat is simply the tool that responds to whatever that acid level turns out to be. Here's where the 2 canning methods split. A pressure canner heats jars to somewhere between 240 and 250 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to physically destroy botulinum spores wherever a food's pH sits too close to neutral for acid to do the job on its own. Green beans and corn are a good example. They carry almost no natural acid, so their pH lands well above 4.6, in the same range this bacteria actually prefers to grow in. Boiling water alone never gets past 212 degrees, no matter how long you leave the pot on the stove, and that temperature simply can't destroy those spores inside a low-acid food in any reasonable amount of time. Acid level even changes how much heat a food needs to begin with. Foods sitting at a pH of 3.5 or lower reach safety at around 175 degrees. Foods between 3.5 and 4 need around 185 degrees, and foods between 4 and 4.3 need around 195 degrees. The needed temperature keeps climbing as pH climbs toward that 4.6 cutoff, right up until a food crosses into low acid territory and jumps straight to 240 degrees and up. So a food's finished pH is really the deciding factor in all of this. Once it sits at or below 4.6, the acid itself is already doing the safety work, and 212 degrees becomes plenty. That single distinction, acid level, is the whole reason pressure canning exists, for some foods and not others. Tomatoes are about to put that distinction to the test. Tomatoes sit right at the edge of that same line, and historically, on the safer side of it. Fresh tomatoes typically test somewhere between 4.3 and 4.9 on the pH scale, and older traditional varieties tended to cluster toward the more acidic end of that range, often comfortably under 4.6, before anyone added a single drop of extra acid. Food regulators even carve out a small allowance for this. Tomatoes are one of the few foods where the acid food cutoff sits slightly higher, at 4.7 instead of 4.6, an acknowledgement that they usually run naturally close to safe already. That's a sharp contrast with the green beans and corn from a moment ago. Those vegetables were never anywhere close to the safe side of the line, while tomatoes were frequently already past it on their own. That's exactly why a water bath alone could work for generations, without a single case of botulism in the family, and without anyone ever measuring a pH strip at the kitchen counter. The cooks who passed that method down weren't guessing about it. Their tomatoes really were acidic enough on their own, and the water bath was matched to the food from the very start. That margin has been shrinking a little, though, and that shift is worth knowing about before you can another batch. Modern tomato varieties get bred for sweetness, color, and a longer shelf life, and that breeding has nudged some of them a little less acidic than the tomatoes your grandparents grew. A few modern varieties now drift close to that 4.6 line, and some sit right on top of it or past it. That's the real reason canning guidance changed after World War II to recommend adding bottled lemon juice or citric acid to home canned tomatoes, even when you're using a plain water bath. Ripeness plays a role too. Tomatoes picked very ripe or grown in a warmer season tend to run even less acidic than a firmer, less ripe fruit, which is one more reason a fixed dose of added acid is worth including every time, regardless of how a particular growing season turned out. That change isn't proof the old method was ever wrong. It's a small insurance step, one that makes a good method reliable across any tomato you might grow or buy, not just the especially acidic ones your family happened to plant decades ago. And the detail matters here. It has to be bottled lemon juice or citric acid specifically, measured out in a set amount per jar, rather than juice squeezed fresh from whatever lemon happens to be on the counter. Fresh lemons vary too much in acidity from one fruit to the next to guarantee a safe result, while a bottled, standardized acid gives every jar the same reliable pH, no matter which tomatoes went into it. Once you see it this way, three separate facts turn into one simple system. Put all three pieces together, and the whole system stops looking like two competing methods and starts looking like one simple logic. Acid decides whether a food is even capable of harboring this danger inside a sealed jar at all. Heat is just the tool matched to that answer. A pressure canner exists for foods that fail the acid test, foods like beans, corn, and meat, where nothing about the food itself stops that bacteria from growing. A water bath exists for foods that pass the acid test, and a properly acidified tomato passes it every time. This is also why a lot of tomato-based recipes get more complicated than plain tomatoes alone. Salsas and chunky sauces that mix tomatoes with peppers, onions, or corn add low-acid ingredients into the jar, and that can push the finished pH of the whole mixture back up past 4.6, even though tomatoes make up most of what's in there. A recipe like that needs its own tested acid level, or in some cases, a pressure canner, regardless of how many tomatoes are in the mix. Regulators call this the finished, or equilibrium, pH, and it matters because acid needs time to spread evenly through a jar, especially once solid pieces are involved. A recipe is only as safe as its slowest corner to acidify, which is exactly why a tested recipe specifies real amounts and real ingredients, rather than something you eyeball at the counter. Following the water bath method all these years was never a shortcut to save money on equipment either. A basic water bath setup usually costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $45 to $70, while a pressure canner runs closer to $90 on the low end and can climb past $400. The science never asked your family to spend more. It only asked for a splash of lemon juice. So the method your family used was never a guess. Acid did the work the whole time, and a set amount of bottled lemon juice keeps it that way. Next time you wonder whether an old kitchen habit was ever really safe, the answer usually comes down to chemistry like this. If you want more of these, the subscribe button's right there, and it means the next one comes and finds you.